Most cheap all-wheel drive SUVs are cheap for a reason. Some are hiding rust. Some are burning oil. Some have transmissions that are already beginning to hesitate. And some look like bargains, only because the previous owner stopped maintaining them 2 years before putting them up for sale. But every once in a while, an older SUV becomes inexpensive without becoming useless. That is where these three vehicles enter the picture. Depending on mileage, condition, title history, and where you live, it is still possible to find examples near the $5,000 range. None of them is indestructible. None should be purchased without an inspection. And none is a true truck-based four-wheel drive vehicle designed for serious rock crawling. They are older all-wheel drive crossovers, built for commuting, winter roads, gravel driveways, family errands, and ordinary American life. The important question is not which badge has the strongest reputation. The important question is which specific version gives you the best chance of avoiding a repair bill larger than the vehicle's value. Because at this price level, the smartest purchase is rarely the SUV with the lowest asking price. It is the SUV that still has a healthy engine, a usable transmission, limited rust, and an owner who can prove that basic maintenance was not ignored. Today we are taking a deeper look at the 2012 Honda CR-V, the 2012 Subaru Forester, and the 2008 Toyota RAV4. We will examine what each one does well, what can go wrong, which engine deserves your attention, and exactly what you should inspect before handing over your money. And by the end, you may discover that the most famous choice is not automatically the best one for you. Let us begin with the vehicle that makes the strongest case for buyers who simply want an older SUV to behave like an appliance. The 2012 Honda CR-V is not exciting in the traditional sense. It does not have serious off-road hardware, dramatic acceleration, or a cabin that feels luxurious by modern standards. What it offers instead is something many used car buyers value much more: a relatively simple mechanical package wrapped in a practical body. The 2012 model marked the beginning of the fourth-generation CR-V in the United States. Every version used a naturally aspirated 2.4-liter four-cylinder engine, producing about 185 horsepower, paired with a conventional 5-speed automatic transmission. That combination matters. There is no turbocharger to replace, no continuously variable transmission to make a nervous buyer wonder about belt or pulley wear, and no complicated hybrid system. The engine is part of Honda's long-running K-Series family, which means parts are widely available, and most independent mechanics are familiar with it. That does not guarantee reliability. It simply reduces the number of unknowns. The CR-V is also one of the easiest vehicles in this group to live with every day. The seating position is high enough to provide a good view of traffic, but the vehicle is not so tall that getting in feels like climbing into a pickup truck. The doors open widely, the controls are straightforward, and the rear seats fold easily when you need additional cargo space. For commuters, retirees, small families, and anyone with limited interest in automotive technology, that simplicity has real value. The all-wheel drive version uses Honda's real-time AWD system. It is important to understand what that means before assuming the CR-V is a miniature off-road truck. During ordinary driving, the system primarily behaves like a front-wheel drive vehicle. When additional traction is needed, it can send power toward the rear wheels. Its purpose is to improve confidence on rain-soaked pavement, light snow, loose gravel, and muddy access roads. It is not designed for deep mud, aggressive trails, or situations requiring a low-range transfer case. That limitation is not necessarily a weakness. Most buyers shopping for a cheap crossover do not need a true four-wheel drive system. They need something predictable when the weather becomes unpleasant, and the CR-V generally performs that job without adding excessive mechanical complexity. Fuel economy is another reason this Honda remains appealing. The all-wheel drive model was originally rated around 22 miles per gallon in the city and 30 on the highway. Real-world results from an older, higher mileage example will depend on driving style, tires, maintenance, and mechanical condition. But the CR-V can still be noticeably easier on gas than larger 6-cylinder SUVs from the same period. The deeper question, however, is whether the CR-V's reputation has caused buyers to become careless. A Honda badge can make people assume that inspection is optional. It is not. One specific issue to listen for is a loud, metallic rattle immediately after a cold start. Honda issued service information addressing a defective variable valve timing control actuator on affected vehicles. The sound may last only a second or two, which is why you should insist on hearing the engine start after it has been sitting. Do not allow the seller to warm the vehicle before you arrive. A warm engine can hide startup noises, weak battery smoke, rough idle, and other symptoms that appear only when everything is cold. Tell the seller in advance that you want the engine completely cold for the inspection. When it starts, listen for rattling, knocking, or a harsh grinding sound. A brief noise does not automatically mean the entire engine is ruined, but it gives you a reason to investigate further and adjust your offer only after receiving an actual diagnosis. Next, test a transmission from a complete stop at low speeds and during moderate acceleration. The 5-speed automatic should shift predictably without severe hesitation slipping or hard engagement. Do not test only on the highway. A transmission can appear acceptable at 60 miles per hour while behaving poorly during the first few shifts around town. Drive slowly through a parking lot, accelerate gently, then repeat with more throttle. Shift from reverse to drive while holding the brake, and notice whether engagement feels immediate or delayed. On an all-wheel drive CR-V, find an empty parking area and perform several slow, tight turns in both directions. Binding, shuddering, or groaning from the rear can indicate neglected rear differential fluid or another drivetrain problem. Sometimes the solution is relatively straightforward. Sometimes the noise points to additional wear. Either way, the vehicle should not be purchased based on assumptions. The suspension deserves attention as well. By 2026, a 2012 model is old enough for struts, control arm bushings, sway bar links, engine mounts, and wheel bearings to become ordinary wear items. None of these components automatically makes the CR-V a bad purchase, but several worn components at once can quickly turn an inexpensive SUV into an expensive project. Drive over rough pavement with the radio off. Listen for clunks. Check whether the steering wheel remains centered. Look for uneven tire wear. A vehicle wearing 2 new tires and 2 badly worn tires may be telling you more about its maintenance history than the seller intended. You should also test every electrical feature and the air conditioning system. Let the air conditioner run long enough to confirm that it continues producing cold air while the vehicle is idling and while it is being driven. Older vehicles frequently receive temporary refrigerant recharges before sale, so cold air during the first 30 seconds proves very little. Underneath the vehicle, look for structural corrosion rather than worrying only about surface rust. Pay particular attention if the CR-V spent its life in the rust belt. Brake lines, mounting points, the subframe, suspension attachment areas, and damaged pinch welds matter more than a small amount of cosmetic oxidation on an exhaust component. Finally, run the VIN through the Federal Recall Database. Never accept a seller's statement that every recall has probably been completed. Verify the individual vehicle. So who should buy the 2012 CR-V? It is the strongest choice here for buyers who prioritize fuel economy, simple daily operation, interior flexibility, and broad access to parts and service. It is particularly appealing for someone who wants a compact SUV but does not want to feel as though they are operating a truck. Who should avoid it? Buyers who need serious off-road capability, strong towing performance, or powerful highway acceleration may find it underwhelming. And anyone who assumes the Honda name eliminates the need for an inspection is exactly the type of buyer most likely to overpay for a neglected one. A clean CR-V with service records can be a sensible purchase. A dirty CR-V with a famous badge is still a dirty, used car. The next vehicle changes the priorities completely. Where the CR-V emphasizes easy ownership, the 2012 Subaru Forester emphasizes traction, visibility, and the feeling that the vehicle was designed from the beginning for poor weather. Every 2012 Forester, came with Subaru's symmetrical all-wheel drive system. Unlike crossovers that treat all-wheel drive as an optional package added to a primarily front-wheel drive layout, the Forester's drivetrain architecture is central to the vehicle's identity. That distinction is most noticeable for buyers who regularly encounter snow, steep, wet roads, loose surfaces, or rural conditions. The Forester also provides generous ground clearance and unusually good outward visibility. Its windows are large, its body shape is upright, and the driver can generally judge the corners of the vehicle without relying entirely on cameras and sensors. For an older driver, a new driver, or anyone tired of modern crossovers with thick pillars and narrow glass, that visibility can be one of the Forester's best features. The base 2.5X used a naturally aspirated 2.5-liter boxer engine, producing approximately 170 horsepower. Depending on configuration, it could be paired with a 5-speed manual or a 4-speed automatic. The automatic has only 4 forward gears, which sounds outdated because it is outdated. Yet simplicity can be an advantage in the used market. It is not especially quick or fuel efficient, but it is a known design that does not attempt to hide its age behind complicated programming. The 5-speed manual can be appealing for buyers who enjoy driving and want even more mechanical simplicity. But condition is critical. A worn clutch, damaged synchronizers, or years of poor shifting technique can erase any theoretical advantage. Then there is the turbocharged Forester 2.5 XT. With approximately 224 horsepower, the XT is much quicker and far more entertaining than the base version. It is also a different ownership proposition. Do not buy the turbo model simply because it costs only slightly more than a naturally aspirated Forester. Turbocharged Subarus reward careful maintenance and punish neglect. Oil quality, oil change intervals, cooling system condition, timing belt history, previous modifications, and the way the vehicle was driven all matter. A completely stock XT, owned by a careful adult, may be worth considering. An XT with an aggressive tune, questionable exhaust modifications, mismatched tires, missing maintenance records, and a seller who describes it as basically a rally car should make you extremely cautious. The cheapest performance SUV in the listings can become the most expensive vehicle on this list to own. For most budget-focused buyers, the naturally aspirated 2.5X is the more rational choice. But it has an important weakness of its own: oil consumption. The 2012 base Forester used Subaru's newer FB25 engine, rather than exactly the same engine design found in many older Foresters. That distinction is important because buyers often repeat the phrase Subaru head gasket without understanding which engine or generation they are discussing. Head gasket failure should never be ignored on any engine showing coolant loss, overheating, contaminated fluids, or previous cooling system problems. But on a 2012 naturally aspirated Forester, oil consumption may be the more immediate issue to investigate. Some engines can use a meaningful amount of oil between changes. The danger is not merely the inconvenience of adding a quart. The real danger is an owner who never checks the dipstick. An engine can continue consuming oil until the level becomes dangerously low. By the time the warning light appears, damage may already be developing. That is why a Subaru inspection should begin before the engine starts. Park the vehicle on level ground and check the dipstick. If the oil level is low, ask the seller when it was last changed and how frequently oil is added. Listen carefully to the answer. A responsible owner may say, "It uses about this much every 1,000 miles, so I check it every other fuel stop." That is not ideal, but it is honest and useful information. A seller who claims the oil was changed yesterday but cannot explain why the dipstick is low is giving you a reason to leave. Look at the exhaust during startup and acceleration. Blue smoke can indicate oil entering the combustion chamber, although the absence of visible smoke does not prove that consumption is normal. After the test drive, inspect the oil again. Check the engine and surrounding areas for leaks. Smell for burning oil. Look for residue around the valve covers and underneath the engine. Cooling system condition also matters. The temperature gauge should remain stable. The coolant reservoir should contain clean fluid at the appropriate level. Bubbles and oily film, unexplained coolant loss, or evidence that the reservoir was recently cleaned deserve investigation. The boxer layout places the cylinder heads low and wide in the engine bay. This helps the vehicle maintain a low center of gravity, but certain repairs can require more labor than they would on a conventional inline-4 engine. That is the trade-off Subaru buyers need to understand. The design provides real handling and traction benefits, but it is not automatically the cheapest engine configuration to repair. Wheel bearings are another item worth listening for. At road speed, a worn bearing may produce a humming or droning sound that changes as vehicle weight shifts during a gentle turn. Tire noise can sound similar, so do not diagnose the problem from one sound alone. Use the noise as a reason for a mechanic to inspect the vehicle. Rust can be especially important on Foresters that lived in snowy climates, precisely because those are the areas where Subaru ownership is most common. Inspect the rear suspension subframes, brake lines, exhaust mounting areas, wheel arches, and underbody carefully. Also verify that all 4 tires match in size, brand, and approximate tread depth. Subaru's all-wheel drive system depends on closely matched rolling diameters. One new tire paired with 3 heavily worn tires is not a small cosmetic issue. It may indicate that the owner did not understand or did not care about the drivetrain's requirements. So, who is the Forester for? It is the strongest candidate of these 3 for someone who genuinely needs winter traction, excellent visibility, and useful ground clearance. It also has a practical cargo area and a body shape that works well for dogs, outdoor equipment, home improvement supplies, and rural driving. Who should avoid it? Anyone who never checks engine oil, dislikes preventative maintenance, or wants the lowest possible risk of specialized engine labor should approach carefully. The Turbo XT is particularly unsuitable for a buyer with no emergency repair budget. A well-maintained Forester can be an extremely useful machine. A neglected Forester can be a warning light with a roof rack. And that brings us to the vehicle that may offer the most compelling powertrain choice on the list, but also contains one of the clearest engine-specific traps. The 2008 Toyota RAV4 belongs to the 3rd generation of Toyota's compact crossover. It is older than the Honda and Subaru, but age alone does not determine value. Condition does. The RAV4 was offered with 2 dramatically different engines. The base version used a 2.4-liter 4-cylinder, producing approximately 166 horsepower, and paired with a 4-speed automatic transmission. The optional 3.5-liter V6 produced approximately 269 horsepower and used a 5-speed automatic. Those specifications do not tell the full story. The 4-cylinder was intended to be the economical, sensible choice. In today's used market, however, it is the engine that requires the most careful investigation, because Toyota's 2.4-liter 2AZ-FE family became associated with excessive oil consumption in certain applications. Not every 4-cylinder RAV4 suffers from severe consumption. Not every affected engine fails. But this is not a rumor you should ignore, simply because Toyota has a strong reliability reputation. Ask how often the owner checks and adds oil. Examine the service history. Look for evidence of engine repairs or an oil consumption test. Check the dipstick before startup and again after driving. Watch for smoke and inspect the spark plug area and exhaust condition if a mechanic performs the inspection. A Toyota that has repeatedly been driven with insufficient oil can become just as damaged as any other neglected vehicle. This is where the V6 becomes interesting. The 3.5-liter engine gives the RAV4 acceleration that still feels strong today. It can merge pass and climb hills with far less effort than the 4-cylinder. It also avoids the specific 4-cylinder oil consumption concern that makes early 3rd-generation RAV4 shopping more complicated. But the V6 is not a free upgrade. It uses more fuel, leaves less working room in the engine bay, and can make certain repairs more labor-intensive. Cooling system maintenance. Oil leaks, accessory, condition, and signs of water pump seepage deserve close attention. A V6 that has been overheated or poorly maintained is not rescued by its engine designation. The correct conclusion is not that every V6 is good and every four-cylinder is bad. The correct conclusion is that the V6 may be the more desirable powertrain when both vehicles have comparable condition and documentation, while a well-maintained four-cylinder with proven oil control may still be better than an abused V6. The RAV4's available all-wheel drive system is designed for on-road traction and light-duty, slippery conditions, not serious off-roading. Like the CR-V, it is a crossover system, rather than a truck-style, low-range, four-wheel drive setup. For snow-covered streets, wet boat ramps, gravel roads, and uneven campsites, it can be useful. For rock crawling, deep ruts, or prolonged heavy off-road use, you need a different category of vehicle. Inside, the RAV4 offers a practical, upright cabin and more usable space than its exterior dimensions suggest. Some buyers will appreciate the simple dashboard and physical controls. Others may dislike the side-hinged rear cargo door, especially when parked close to another vehicle or loading on a busy street. The rear-mounted spare tire also changes how the cargo door operates. This design is not mechanically dangerous, but it is a daily life detail worth experiencing before you buy. Open the rear door in a tight parking space and decide whether you can live with it. During the test drive, evaluate both the engine and transmission from cold. The transmission should engage drive and reverse without a long delay. Shifts should not produce hard clunks, slipping, or unusual flares in engine speed. With the V6 test acceleration, carefully after the engine has warmed, it should pull strongly and smoothly. Hesitation, misfires, warning lights, coolant odors, or unstable temperature readings require further diagnosis. Inspect the suspension over broken pavement. At this age, struts, links, bushings, wheel bearings, and engine mounts may already have been replaced. May need replacement soon, or may be a mixture of old and inexpensive aftermarket parts. That mixture matters. A seller may advertise new suspension when only one component was replaced. Ask for receipts. Determine whether both sides of an axle were serviced together. Look at the brand of the replacement components. Cheap parts installed quickly before sale do not carry the same value as documented repairs performed by a reputable shop. Rust is again one of the most important deciding factors. An engine can be repaired or replaced. Severe structural corrosion can make an otherwise good vehicle unsafe or financially unreasonable to save. Do not judge rust while standing beside the vehicle. Put it on a lift. Inspect the subframes, suspension mounts, brake and fuel lines, rocker areas, and attachment points. A fresh layer of black undercoating deserves more investigation, not less. Sometimes, undercoating protects a clean chassis. Sometimes, it hides corrosion long enough to complete a sale. The RAV4 is the best fit for buyers who want more available power, a practical interior, and a widely supported Toyota platform. The V6 version is particularly appealing for highway driving, hills, passengers, and buyers who find the CR-V too slow. The four-cylinder can still make sense when its maintenance history is unusually strong, and the engine demonstrates acceptable oil consumption. But it should never be purchased solely because the four-cylinder appears cheaper to operate. An inexpensive engine that consumes oil and has been repeatedly run low is not an economy engine anymore. Now that we have examined all three vehicles, which one is the smartest purchase? The honest answer depends on what you need and what condition you can actually find. For the lowest drama, daily driver experience, the 2012 Honda CR-V is probably the best starting point. Its conventional engine and automatic transmission, strong parts availability, efficient packaging, and manageable fuel economy make it easy to recommend to a broad range of buyers. But you still need to listen for the cold start rattle. Inspect the rear differential. Behavior. Test the air conditioning. And verify maintenance. For frequent snow-rough rural roads and drivers who value visibility and traction above fuel economy, the 2012 Subaru Forester has the clearest advantage. Its standard all-wheel drive system and useful ground clearance make it feel more prepared for difficult weather. But the base engine's oil consumption must be investigated. All 4 tires must be properly matched. And the turbocharged XT should be treated as a performance vehicle, rather than a cheap version of the ordinary Forester. For stronger acceleration and the possibility of a genuinely desirable engine combination, the 2008 Toyota RAV4 V6 may be the hidden winner. It provides far more power than the Honda or naturally aspirated Subaru while retaining a compact, practical body. But the 4-cylinder requires serious oil consumption scrutiny. The V6 still needs careful cooling system inspection, and every 2008 example must be judged as an aging vehicle rather than as an abstract Toyota reputation. Here is the rule that matters more than the ranking. At the bottom of the used car market, condition outranks brand. A clean title Honda with no service records, severe rust, 4 mismatched tires, and a warm engine waiting when you arrive may be a worse purchase than a less famous vehicle with complete maintenance documentation. A high-mileage SUV with consistent oil changes, recent cooling system work, quality tires, and a clean inspection can be a safer bet than a lower-mileage vehicle that sat neglected or traveled only on short trips. Mileage is evidence. It is not a verdict. Before buying any vehicle in this price range, begin with a cold inspection. Check every fluid you can safely inspect. Look underneath. Test every switch. Drive on both rough city streets and a faster road. Perform tight turns. Test reverse. Use the brakes firmly in a safe location. Watch the temperature gauge. Scan the computer for current, pending, and recently cleared diagnostic codes. Then pay an independent mechanic for a pre-purchase inspection. Not the seller's mechanic. Not the dealership that is trying to close the sale. Choose someone whose only job is to tell you what the vehicle needs now and what it is likely to need soon. Ask for a written estimate. A worn tire, weak battery, leaking strut, overdue fluid service, and noisy wheel bearing may not individually destroy a deal. Together, they can add thousands of dollars to your real purchase price. And always keep money in reserve after the sale. Spending every dollar of your budget on the vehicle itself is one of the fastest ways to turn a manageable repair into a financial emergency. Older vehicles need batteries, brakes, fluids, belts, hoses, sensors, tires, suspension parts, and unexpected repairs, even when the model has a good reputation. The purchase price gets the vehicle into your driveway. The repair reserve keeps it there. The 2012 Honda CR-V, 2012 Subaru Forester, and 2008 Toyota RAV4 can all be intelligent used purchases. They can also all be terrible purchases when neglected, rusted, overheated, or sold with hidden mechanical problems. Do not buy the story. Buy the condition. Do not pay extra for the badge without verifying what is underneath it. And do not walk away from a high-mileage vehicle merely because the odometer makes you uncomfortable. Walk away when the inspection service history, seller behavior, and mechanical condition tell you the risk is too high. If you had $5,000 and needed an all-wheel drive SUV tomorrow, which one would you choose? The CR-V, the Forester, or the RAV4 V6? And more importantly, what would you inspect first? If you want more practical used car analysis designed to help you avoid expensive mistakes and find genuinely worthwhile vehicles, subscribe to the channel. There are still good deals in the used market, but the best ones usually go to the buyers who know exactly what they are looking at.